3, 2, 1.
All right, you've made it to part 3. We're going to be doing a bit of a product reveal in this one, specifically a car. We're going to be trying to art direct the wrinkles a little bit more and get really, really nice kind of physics as we pull it away. And there's a lot to cover, so why don't we jump right in? All right, we are back in Cinema 4D R21, and we're starting to get fancy here. Now, we already did part 1 and part 2. We covered all the basics where we didn't use any plugins or any details, so this time I'm feeling free to go off the rails here. First of all, we've got Redshift, so we got some renders going on. And I mean, obviously, I used to be a grayscale gorilla, so I'm not going to be shy about having used some tools there, especially that I helped put together. And, you know, since I'm not directly profiting from them anymore, then you can just take my recommendation that they're really good tools. So what we've got going on in this is I'm using Redshift. So I've got a Redshift dome light, and that's got grayscale gorillas HDRI link, so we can just run through different HDRs. I've also got just this light panel up here. So you'll see if I zoom out, I've got a cloner with a bunch of just luminant planes up there. It just makes it so that I got some nice light beams traveling around. In addition to that, this is a car I bought off of Turbo Squid. I just really like Tesla, so I grabbed one of those. I liked the model. And then I used Chad's texture pack to quickly texture the entire thing and made it incredibly easy to do. So I also highly recommend that. We'll also be using a whole bunch of Grayscale Gorilla's Signal tool, my favorite tool that we ever developed over there, and make it more non-destructive by using some of these plugins. So that's the idea. Full disclaimers up there, but let's dive right on in. So don't need the render view, pretty much don't need it for the entire thing. Here's the car. First thing we need is, this is way, let's go ahead and hit NB, and you'll see this is way too high poly to drop dynamics on. It's just insane. So luckily, in Cinema 4D, we now have the volume builder along with the volume mesher. We'll need both of those. Don't know why they became children of light. We'll pull that out. So let's do the proper order here. Sorry about that. Let's make a copy of the car. So I'm just going to hold it down, the copy, and drop it into the builder. And it's going to take a second. Hide the original. So there you can see the voxels being generated by the builder. Let's immediately put it into the mesher, and boom, you can see, boom, nice blob of a car, very low poly. Didn't even have to think about it, just threw the entire mesh in, boom, perfect, brilliant. Now we can increase the resolution we want by decreasing the voxel size. We can drop it down to 8, and you can see it recalculates. We can drop it down to 6, recalculates, and you're going to see it's getting more and more detail. You know what? The more detail we put on, the longer it's going to take to run. So, you know, to tell you the truth, let's see, I was actually pretty happy with the 10. This looks all right to me. It's pretty dang symmetrical, and it's covering the entire car. And honestly, because we're wrinkling the cloth up, I don't think it has to be super duper accurate. Now, if you were running incredibly high poly cloth simulations on here, soft body simulations, the more detail in the car, the better. But I think we can get away with this. So I think that's actually as far as I'm going to go with it. Immediately make the volume mesher editable. Now, I'm not sure. Sometimes there's an internal volume on here. So I'm going to select all these polygons, select a polygon, hit the shortcut UW, and then hit delete. And I just see now there's nothing inside, so it is cool. I don't need to do that. And then let's unhide the original car and make sure that we are mostly capturing the space. I'm fine with this wheelbase not going in there. We're losing a little bit of detail here. Now, something you will see is that we are not catching this mirror very well. Now, this did not subdivide down the center, so I guess it'd probably be worth a moment of like correctly pulling this through the mirror. But you know what? Why don't we use, let's just say that we have a client, we got a deadline, we don't have too much time to be wasting on here. So let's do the quick version of this. First of all, our mesh is not perfectly capturing everything. I feel like, you can see that we can, the car is mostly what we see here. So I think something we need to do is inflate this. Now, we could have inflated it in the volume mesher, but what I like doing is creating a displacer, putting it inside the volume mesher, inside the shading, put a solid color, just color, white, and now that's going to make the entire thing expand outward. So we just have like an inflation deformer now, which is Really cool. So, and you can actually go negative as well. We could shrink it inside if we wanted to. But what we want to do here is go out. So at 0, it's not doing anything. But now if I can click on 1, and just that 1, you can see how, boom, it's popped out and it's covering everything pretty well. Not quite catching these edges. I don't know if that's going to be a problem. We could click it one more and you see it does a better job overall of catching it. But you know what? Something that's neat is we can leave this live. I can do this at 1 unit. And if it doesn't work later, we can inflate it more. So we'll just keep that in mind. Now, in addition to that, and like I said, we're just trying to make this run quickly. In addition, instead of worrying about modeling this mirror and trying to get really clean, let's just do that sphere technique again. So I'm going to create a sphere and create a cloner. Why is it? I must have a button stuck or something because it's automatically making things children. Hopefully that, click a couple of my buttons and see if they wake up. Let's put the sphere inside the cloner, and I'm going grid array. We do not need 3 by 3, so I'm going to set this down to 1 by 2, and super eyeball it. Make sure I'm only pulling it on 2 axes. T for scale on just the sphere and shrink that down. And what's cool about doing this little technique, and the scene file I have here, everything's very clean, very centered, so I can very easily move this. You see it's happening on both sides very, very evenly. So I just want to approximate the positioning of this. So maybe that, if I grab this dot here carefully, grab this dot. Oh, it's not quite. I got to go to object mode. There we go. There, now I can pull this out and you see it's actually pulling that out. T for scale. There, that's a lot better. So that's pretty much, it's going to stick out the back a little bit. That's fine. Copy and paste the cloner, shrink it in, grab the sphere, T for scale, scale that up a little bit extra big. This one I think I can scoot forward just a little bit. It's not gonna be perfect. Once again, we're trying to do the quick client version on this. And one more ought to do it. Like I said, these spheres calculate really fast, so I think we've got a very nice setup here. Pull this forward. Now, I guess the only thing I'm worried about is we need the front of this to be caught. So let's grab this middle one, copy paste, scoot this one there. I guess a little bit of quick box modeling would have done the job as well. But hey, any reiterating we can do here to make this cleaner, that's fine with me. And copy paste one last time. Scoot this one in. E for move, scoot forward, back out a little bit. There we go. Just a friendly little cluster of spheres. Hopefully, no, that was a little big. T for scale, move upward. There we go. Good enough for me. Hopefully that is going to cover the mirror really well. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And I don't know if we'll have to fix any more of those. Excellent. So I think a good idea here would be creating a null and putting all of these inside of that. Now, I do want to directly select these spheres and add the simulation tag, collider body, in fact, directly to those spheres because I want to make sure that the collision shape is set from automatic to ellipsoid because that makes it calculate really fast. So with that in mind, those should all be calculating incredibly quick. And then we've got our volume mesher. This also needs to be a collider body, but this one, of course, needs to be a static mesh instead of an ellipsoid because it is a static mesh. All right, excellent. That should be all the dynamics applied to the car directly. In addition to that, we've got the floor. And you know what? As long as we've got this null, let's just make this the dynamics null. We'll keep everything inside there. Now, we know we don't want anything sliding around on the car. So the magic number we've been using, in fact, I'm going to put this at the start of the volume mesher. That way I can easily select all of those tags holding shift. No bounce. Friction of 222, lots of friction, 0 collision noise, just because we don't need any more randomness there. We're controlling the randomness when we want it. In theory, I don't know for sure, but in theory, we could potentially delete out the polygons underneath the car. It could speed things up a little bit, but mostly collisions only happen once it's actually collided. So I'm not super worried about that. And we could spend all day being really specific and cleaning things up. Like we got this one weird polygon here. I can grow the selection once and dissolve. And there we go. That polygon is now a little bit more cleaned up. You know, you could spend lots of time doing that. I'm not worried about that. We've got our dynamics. Make it, I guess I'll just make that entirely invisible. If we wanted to, we could put a display tag on it, but you know, that's fine for now. Now, create a plane, and this will be our cloth. Scoot it up into the air. In the past, we had been moving everything down below, but you know what? This car's in a different position, so this is a good opportunity to do a slightly different workflow. I'm going to visually hide the lights because I don't want them getting in the way of our camera. Now, remember, what we've been doing is scaling up our object. It's dynamically getting bigger, so we definitely want this to be a little smaller than the car to start out with. So make sure it's visually centered pretty well from the front and back. I want it to be pretty square, something like that. We can actually just start getting a baseline with this really low poly model. So something like this, incredibly low poly, but it should be a good start. Name it cloth, and we can get into the dynamics, but you know what? There's one thing I would like to do, just because we're talking so much about cloth. Let's try and make a, I'm not great at making materials in Redshift, so this is dangerous, but why don't we go ahead and first of all save our file, save incremental, and now let's try and make a quick cloth material in Redshift. Feel free to skip this part if you are not interested in Redshift or making a material, or you're already an expert in it, but I'm going to do it. Redshift, materials, let's see, what's the good start? I guess we can just do a basic material. All right, cool. Redshift material, double click it, pop open our window. The basics of what we want to do. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to be using a bunch of images in here, but I'm going to be providing those images on my Patreon. So if you want the images I'm going to be using on here, like, feel free to head on over to Patreon. So it's very shiny right now. We don't want that. So we've got our reflection. I don't even know how much reflection we want. We might make that more shiny later to bring some, to bring some shininess in, but we don't need that in the beginning. So I'm going to search for a texture node, search for texture, boom. Cool. So here is our, this will be one texture under general. Let's go and hunt down something inside of the tutorial scenes. I should have a texture folder, and here are the images. I actually generated this out of Cinema 4D. So I've got kind of this knit material going. So here's a normal. I don't even think we'll go too crazy. I'll provide all four of them, but we might just use the normal. So there we're outputting a normal map. And I can't even remember. I think we just put this into a bump map. So I think we feed this out to a bump map. I'm probably going to do this wrong, and there's probably somebody yelling at me, but I don't think there's a normal. Well, there's legacy normal. So I think everything got put into this bump. If I'm doing it wrong, well, I'm learning. This is the input in our bump map. I think it's looking at the height field. I think a height field would be black and white. So, and it didn't find anything with normal. So hey, let's give it a go. Unless there's like displacement. Displace. Height field, vector. Yeah, it could be. I'm not sure. But let's try the bump. It should look all right even if we do it wrong. So let's try tangent space normal. Why not? It does turn red. That's not encouraging. Output this to the overall bump. Let's see what that does. So that loads in. Oh, actually, it did a very nice job, and that material looks okay. I don't know if it's entirely correct, but there we go. Now I also did, there's also a bump. There's also a color in there. Why don't we go ahead and bring the color in just for fun? We get a little bit of variation from it. So make a duplicate of that node. We'll find the color, and this is just black and white, but it's meant to be, feed it through a range, some sort of colorizer. I'm not even sure what the colorizer, I think it's a ramp in here. So if we search for a ramp, switching between renderers can be tricky. I'm going to feed this in as the input, and we've got this ramp, and this ramp we can feed in for this to be whatever colors we want. So honestly, I think it's going to end up being pretty dark. So let's go with a dark gray, and it'll go all the way to black. Feed this into our diffuse color channel, and that should hopefully make this quite dark. Yeah, a bunch of different colors there. Honestly, we go super crazy with this, but why don't we just add in a little bit of reflection again? We'll make it very blurred out. So it's just kind of catching some highlights. That's as far as I'm going to go. It's not anything fancy, but I think this texture map I made is pretty nice. So we will apply that, and heck, let's just see what the render view is giving us. It'll look a lot better once it's dynamic now I think about it. So we'll pull it up once we've done some dynamics. So save incremental again. Let's add the dynamics. Right click, simulation, soft body. If you've watched the other two parts, which I hope you have, pretty straightforward. We can do a moving mesh, no bounce, pretty dang high friction, no noise. back in here. We want no damping. Go away, damping. Damping's our enemy in this case. Flexion of 5, structure of 2. Just a good start, a good overall cloth setting. Definitely go back and build that test scene to tinker around and get some different variants on it, though. Let's see how well this runs. Everything else is default. The default steps per frame, default, everything, I think. Actually, let's just double check that because I might have used this from an old scene file. Nope, it's default. Everything's default. Excellent. Good to know. So hitting play, you can see that actually this is running insanely fast. It just kind of flops down like a fish. So yeah, just bump. Now, actually, I'm going to temporarily pull that material off just so we can see it very clearly. So you can see that this is falling and it's running crazy fast. Good news for us. So with it going so fast, let's double our point count or our poly count and hit play. It's still running crazy fast for us. Looks great. So it's flopping on top of the car. Now let's see how well we can get the wrinkles going. Here's where I start using signal. If I right click, I can add a Grayscale Gorilla signal tag. It's a plugin from Grayscale Gorilla. Grab the dynamics tag, and I'm going to control the rest length by dragging it directly into this question mark onto the signal tag, and now it says R for rest length, and that is now directly controlling that. Now, all this is kind of like a keyframe replacement. Instead of the keyframes being buried away, they're right here and they're easy to select and change and modify and add variation. But we're going to be using it in very simple ways. What I want this to do is go to from a scale of 100 to, let's double it, 200. So it's going to go all the way up to 200%. Right click on the spline, set it to linear, and now it's going to transition from the time of 0 to 90. It's going to transition there. Now, it took about, I don't know, it was pretty quick. So let's give it, it's going to start at frame 15. It's not going to start until frame 15. And I don't think we need too long for it to grow. So let's stop at 55. So we got 40 frames for that to scale up. So you can see how easy it was for me to set that up. And what's cool is that I have such direct control. All the information is right here. So starting from 0, I can play. It's going to fall down. It's got just enough time to settle. And then at frame 20, you're going to see suddenly this is going to explode in scale. And now it gets all floppy and wrinkly. Now, here's where it's going to start getting tricky. The car, the scale is very different. So we need more resolution on the cloth for it to feel more detailed. And that just means everything that we do is going to be slow. It's going to slow down. We just need more polygons. So we'll probably be spending a lot of time doing little time skips in this section. I just want to see if our cloth is looking any good because we just made it. So let's go to our render view, hit play. It's going to be very low poly, but let's just see if it looks all right. Oh yeah, it's it's looking okay, but you can see the knit is super huge, but it's designed to be tiled. So I'll select that. It's on UV. Let's do 11 tiles. So instantly you see that, kind of the cloth effect disappears a little bit. Actually, now I think about it, we need to tile this really cleanly on the X and Y. So let's try doing 2, 3. I think I'm doing it backwards. 3. There we go. 2. Yeah, there. It's a little more square. So now I can do 22 by 11. And there we go. That should be a little more square. Zoom in on it. Once we do a subdivision surface, that should look better. Yeah, so there's our tiling going. I don't know if we want bigger or smaller. I kind of want it rotated 90 degrees, but what are you going to do? Yeah, just a little bit of texture on there. All right, so anyway, going back to actually dealing with our dynamics here, which is what we're trying to learn. We need more resolution just overall. So we can double this again, times 2. Now, here's something that we're going to be playing with a lot more in this one. Instead of making sure everything's very square, I think I'm mostly going to increase our subdivisions going forward and back because I want the wrinkles not to be bunched up like along the car. I want the wrinkles to be across the car. So we now doubled our resolution there, but we didn't go times4 because we only did it on one axis. So just by changing that singular one, let's hit play. It's going to fall. All the same settings are still there. We do see that it is poking. Actually, no, when I zoom up, it's fine. So as of right now, our low poly mesh is treating us very well. So that has a few frames to settle. It's going to now explode. And now with that double that resolution, you already see it feels a little bit better as far as the way this is starting to overlay. Now we are doubling the size of the cloth over the course of those 55 frames. We've got some nice overlapping wrinkles, but once again, the scale feels pretty large. It's not quite as wide as I want it to be. You see, it's not reaching the floor, so we need to make it wider. And it might be long enough, but let's make it longer as well. Make it a little bit longer, a little bit wider. Just to make it run quick, I'm going to cut our height segments in half, so there's not that many going that way. But we will add 150 total to our width segments, so going along the car. So hopefully that's not going to take any longer to run, but it's going to run quicker, or at the same speed, but visual, our indication resolution is going to be better. Oh, look at that already. Look at how much better these wrinkles look. Like the scale felt pretty good for a second there. Now it's actually scaling up too much now. I feel like we're exploding it too much. So here's a new thought. We only want this to go up to about 150. So Signal makes it great. I can just click Signal, say, I want this to go to 150. And there, now that change has been made. Now it's not going to be scaling up quite as much. So I think maybe a little bit wider, another little bit longer. But that's all good. Still running nice and quick. So let's jump up to 200 with segments. We will need more height, but as long as we can be running quick on our tests, let's take what we can get. So already you can see that there's a definite across the car kind of vibe. And then these start exploding out. This is getting a little upset. So we might need to figure something. Oh, it figured itself out. But yeah, look at the feel of these wrinkles over it. It's definitely, it's got a smaller scale. It's not super small, but it's smaller. So yeah, that is definitely doing a better job. Now, there's a lot of different things we might do here. First of all, I just want to double check our settings. Yeah, structural 250 on the shear, flexion. Yeah, it seems all fine. Honestly, I don't think we need the shear to be nearly as strong as we have been. That can bend more. I'm fine with that. And then there's all. Oh, we didn't set the drag. I forgot about that. Let's do some drag, two-sided. That might slow down the way it falls as well. So let's keep that in mind. It could be something that we turn on later, just not in the beginning. So just another variable. Now it's running nice and quick, so I'm fine doing another quick test, letting this fall down. It's almost perfect timing on the scale. So once again, Signal made it really easy to place those exactly where we want to. I'm very happy with the overall timing on that. The wrinkles are revealing themselves nicely. It does seem to be drifting down a little bit slower, but it's a little bit hard to tell. It's not quite getting over the nose, and it's not quite getting over the trunk. So I guess it does need to be longer because we're not scaling up that much. Although the overall length seems to be pretty good. So yeah, let's just make it longer. We got to keep in mind that we are losing resolution because if that gets longer, then that means we do need a few more segments here. And then it's all going well, but we do need these extra height segments. Now this is going to start adding on a little bit of time for us. As we were talking about earlier, as we increase the resolution, everything starts slowing down, and it slows down based on what points are colliding with other points. So if these like these outer ones are actually not colliding too much, so they're not calculating that long. As we get more things in contact with more surfaces, that's when it's going to start slowing down more and more. So actually you can see as it plays, each frame is slower than the one before. Once again, there's not really a way around that, but hopefully you can see that we're doing a great job now of covering the car, and we've got these nice horizontal wrinkles. Now, and I did a lot of tinkering around with this and trying to get different results, and I found that you don't want this to be too wrinkled. You don't want to bunch it up too much because it doesn't look that good when it's too bunched up. Here, it's still going, and I think technically it's still growing until we get to 55. So this hasn't quite reached the ground yet. I kind of like the idea of this barely not touching the ground, but I think I'm also fine with the idea of it touching the ground slightly. So let's just let it keep going. It's doing a good job. Now we might be peaking through a couple points around here, so we might need to add in a couple of spheres to stop those from escaping, or inflate it a little bit more. I don't want to inflate it any more than we have to, because that will, it's going to lose detail in the car. So we want to be careful with that. But okay, it's finally done growing. It's mostly just going to be settling now. The wrinkles are pretty good, maybe a few more than I really want to. So we could always make the overall basic scale a little bit chilled out, and let this settle. Actually, this is going way better than I thought it would. There's a couple other techniques I thought we were going to have to try, but this is just working. I'll talk through some of the other ideas I had, but yeah, the frames are definitely taking longer. I'm fine seeing as long as I have information to tell, but this is kind of getting to the settled in point. Actually, yeah, that's pretty much done. There's some settling probably going on, but I'll go ahead and pause it. Okay, cool. It's not taking so long to calculate. That freaked out. Zooming in, you can definitely see that it's not escaping here. And just based on how few polygons we have horizontally, this curve is really suffering. So our fidelity on the edge of the car, like it's not going to be great just based on that. But I gotta say, our overall wrinkles covering up this car is very nice. Like I think there's a little hint up here. I don't really have a problem with that. We could scale it a little bit more. The back, I guess maybe the back could use a little bit of love. This little trunk is not quite trapped inside. So yeah, a couple little tweaks making these wider if need be. But these wrinkles are looking pretty nice. And why don't we create one of those subdivision surfaces and just drop it in there for a moment and then see what this looks like when it's actually, this is what it would look like final. So it's a lot of wrinkles, but stylistically, that's cool. And it's a lot easier to get rid of wrinkles than to add them in. So like this is a great start. Now, based on the structure of it, you can see that if this had more time, it'd probably settle in more, but there's also not that many polygons traveling along the side. So, okay, so what we're going to do is a couple tweaks here, and then we'll probably run the sim again, except I'll do a time skip. So here's the thought. Let's fix our model overall. In order to do that, I don't want to lose all this nice information that we've got. So let's pull the cloth out, and I guess we'll just compare the model. We know that right up here along the hood, here it's escaping. Let's just make sure that, and then the trunk definitely wasn't. So let's just double check those parts of the model. So we're going to lose this, but that's fine. And is our scale good? I think we just want to make it a little bit longer, and then we'll add more subdivisions. So that's our laundry list. Now, something I actually kind of forgot to do that's important is if we start setting the initial state, we're going to start losing our position and rotation as we have been in other scene files, but we're not at 0, 0, 0 this time. So what I do is I put it into a null, and we can even name this the 0 null. So whenever the cloth doesn't snap back to 0, 0, 0, we can always just hit reset PSR and it will jump to it there. Technically, I know you can go and set your freeze transformations. I just like it being very visual in the viewport. Okay, so let's go walk through our steps. I'm going to make this longer, not too much. In fact, I might even grab our 0 null and just scoot it back a couple of little centimeters there. Visually hide the cloth so we can deal with our dynamics. Let's just make them all visible. Currently the material's on there, so that's escaping. Now, okay, I think that this is what was escaping through. As I said, unfortunately, this mesh is not symmetrical, but let's see. Let's just make it symmetrical. That's not a problem. So this line right here is the one that runs through the middle. So I think it should hopefully be trivial to hit UB, the shortcut for ring selection, UB, while we're in edge mode. And I can select that middle edge. And now I can hit MF for edge cut, hit apply, and there, it should put a cut right down the middle of the car. And we know it's captured everything. Now I'll go to point mode, rectangle selection, and yeah, that's all fine. Select this and everything but the middle line, delete. Now, just to be sure, let's select that entire middle line. And you see that actually it is not quite on Z and it's not quite 0 on Z size. The reason I know it's Z is, first of all, we see it on Z, but it's also the smallest number. So let's set 0 and 0 there. So that should be perfectly aligned. And now that that is perfectly aligned, we should be free to hold down Alt as we create a symmetry, and it's going to create a mirror. Let's mirror it across the proper axis, in this case on XY, and that should be perfectly mirrored. And now, of course, I'm going to move the displacement one layer down just so that it's displacing after the symmetry. And now any change that we make to one side will happen to the other, which is exactly what we're going for. Now, let's just make sure our polygons are friendly. Although, now that I think about it, there is the slight problem of this displacer is doing a lot of work for us, but it's not going to do a good job of showing us our polygons. And actually, the symmetry object is it what's stopping us? The symmetry? Why can't I see our polys? Okay, well, yeah, it is a symmetry. I just have to have it selected. But when I have it selected, the displacer isn't going to be giving us the information we want it to. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bake the displacer in. So make the displacer a child. In fact, we might want it still inflate. So I'm going to make a copy, turn it off. And this one, I'm going to say current state to object. So that's been baked down. Now we've got this version of it, and that one should be more of this finalized mesh. And now I'm planning on just doing a little bit of quick surgery on the car. And yeah, it's gonna be quick. So let's just scoot this a little bit forward. It should probably be in point mode. Scoot that just a little bit more forward. Over here, these definitely were not quite doing what we wanted to, so I can scoot that forward. Deselect a couple of these outer points, maybe even that one. Scoot that out a little bit more. Grow my selection. U, Y. And I can just scoot those out a little bit. Grow again. Scoot out just a little bit. Maybe don't want these top ones. And those are the main ones that seem to have been escaping. We can always do more selections, but those were the ones that had been escaping us. And then I think we saw some escapees over here. Select that. Scoot that over. Nice. And I don't remember them escaping from here, but this definitely is not quite up to par. So let's, I just blindly selected there, assuming there was a point or two. Grow my selection. I don't want that. Everything else looks good though. Scoot a little bit. The less of these colors sneaking through, the better it's going to be for us. I can scoot that a little bit further. These, that could probably go up a little bit. So I'm just going to be tweaking points and polygons here just to make sure that not too much of this car is sneaking out. Scoot that over. Yeah, these didn't specifically pop out as problems, but let's just give them a little bit of love. Excellent. And then I'll just grab these two. I said these two. And then we'll just fix that trunk, which seemed to be the last problem area. I think it's kind of another, I don't know if there's any points in here, but we'll do a blind select there. I caught one here, but we'll have to grab the polygons, which should be right around there. Scoot those back. I can hold down Shift, and then it's going to select those points on top. Erase out these bottom ones. Once again, if we were being really particular, we'd spend more time here. Deselect that. Scoot those back. We were really missing the trunk, so I don't mind pulling those a little bit further. Grow my selection 1. Scoot that back. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Rogue point right there. Pull that. Maybe even up a little bit. This neighbor up. Grab that neighbor up. Okay, there we go. I'm fine with that. I mean, it's just some tweaks, but I mean, I guess the point being is that, you know, it could be worth a little bit of effort to do the cleanup if need be. You could also do the sloppier job and just inflate the displacer, which, you know, we still have the option of doing. I'll just grab this because that one seems like an obvious fix. Good enough for me. All right. Okay, so there's a newer mesh. I mean, it's not obviously it's not perfect, but it should be a lot better than what we had. We've got our cloth. Let's unhide our cloth. The dynamics can again be hidden. And when it comes to this mesh, we are going to subdivide it some more. So just because we're going to do a calculation, I'll jump this up 130, just a few more, because we made it longer, and I'm going to double our height segments. So there's going to be a lot more resolution horizontally. Still not square, but a lot more even. And we're going to let this all fall. Now we are getting a lot of extra cloth on the corners. We already talked about in the last one how we could get rid of those. We could also potentially like model some sort of oval or scoot those in. I'm not going to be worried about that one in this. So let's see how long. I guess a save incremental here is justified. Save incremental. I'm going to hit play. And let's just see how long this is taking. And once again, these first few frames are fine. I didn't turn the symmetry on, did I? That's probably important. Blink. Also, I probably need to move this dynamics tag up to the symmetry. So just so that can run. Okay, so that's twice the geometry. But let's see. Now you're going to see in the very beginning that this is going to run relatively well. It's going to run quick, but once again, it slows down as we go. So as soon as it starts slowing down a little bit too much, we'll do a little bit of a time skip. Now we're definitely seeing a couple little hints of sneaking through, but the camera's a little bit further away, so we're not going to worry about that. There's a distinct chance we might need to sneak some spheres in here, but I gotta say, look how much sharper the image of this car is. Like we're definitely getting a vibe that like these mirrors are here, even though those are just a couple of spheres. Like the shape of the car is coming through a lot better because of our increased resolution. Now, when you think about when we were just doing the Rocket Lasso logo, we had so few polygons. There are so many polygons in this setup. Like it's just so much slower. Now, another small problem I could see is because we got all these extra polygons horizontally, that the setup here in the center is giving us a distinctly more, well, it's wrinkling in the center more. As it grows, there's fewer polygons to clean themselves up, so there's getting to be some wrinkles across that center. So we might have to do some of those other tricks I was talking about, but we don't know yet if that's going to be the case. As it continues to settle in, once again, I had mentioned in the previous one that you can't, eventually we're going to want to set initial state. You can't do that if you bake it. If you bake this down, that you can't go to a frame and be like, oh, I like that frame, bake it down. You'd have to make it editable and then make that the current state. And then all of your flexion and shear is calculating off of that point instead of that original flat cloth. There's a lot of reasons not to do that. So what I have found is it is best just to let it play back in the viewport. Just let it go and kind of keep an eye on it and pause it when you need to. Typically, because of the techniques we're doing, you can't let it run too long as it doesn't hit the end of the timeline. It's just settling in more and more and more. That's not a bad thing. So we got a couple interesting, well, first of all, like I said, we got a lot of wrinkles in here. They still might settle down a little bit, which is potentially fine. It's looking a little bit weird over here. I'm not sure why this curvature is happening, but let's just give it a little more time to settle. Might not be wrong yet. It might just be like might have been bunching up on the top, and now that bunching fell down, and that ripple just needs to travel through the entire rest of the cloth. I'm fine with a little bit of waviness. Like I like that waviness, but and I gotta say, when I was running some of these tests earlier, there was definitely some clumping or kind of slide down the windshield and then get bunched up down here. Not as nice as I would potentially want it to be, but we might go deeper and do some of the other tricks I wanted. So I'm gonna let this run a few more frames. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes here. I'm going to stop it because it's just going to keep calculating. It was doing a pretty good job of doing everything. I'm going to hold the play button, or the pause button in this case, until it wakes up, or at least a few seconds on it does a good job of acknowledging it. If not, we'll hit render. Actually, see right there, it did eventually stop. Excellent. Now, a couple things. It does seem like that one wrinkle, once it stopped growing, it was falling through pretty well. But you can see that we're getting a lot of weird pinching up here, and I think there's a couple chunks of car that are just escaping through to an unacceptable degree. Tiny ones like this, we might be able to work around. Like that's just barely sneaking through, but this big one, we can't do that. So let's check out what we ended up with here. Let's try subdividing and check it out. And yeah, look at this weird little like wrinkle happening. I mean, I love the wrinkles on the side of the car here, but this top is unacceptable. We can't do that. So pull this back out of the subdivision surface, rewind. We lose all that processing, but we now get to do that alternative thing I was talking about. But before we get to that, let's turn off the cloth and let us do the spear trick again on. I'm going to make a new null because I want something to hold this black material just so I can see everything nice and clean. Okay, so we've got things escaping through the car that should not be. And I do think that they're escaping through the car. I mean, technically, we've got a couple points here. We might be able to scoot over. I'm even going to go overboard because we don't want to spend more time doing this kind of tweaking. So we'll just do that and that. And that's all we're going to do. So now you see we got all these polygons here. Now it's quite a few polygons, but it's not that many polygons. So what I'm thinking is we got the symmetry object. I don't want to lose that, but I don't think the selection will carry through. But let's just grab some areas we think will be problem areas. That might be a good way of thinking of this. I'm going to do that. That's all potential problem areas here. Definitely along here. Maybe a couple there. Definitely there and there. Back here, definitely. And then as we pull away, I'm a little worried about that spot. So we'll do that. So that is a selection of points that we might be escaping through. And I should err on like taking a little bit more than we think we need. Better than having to do those calculations later. And honestly, I'm even kind of inclined to like snag a few in these flat areas. I don't know if we need them, but you know, why not? So there we go. We got some selection. I hope this does the symmetry. I kind of doubt it will though. Let's create a selection, set selection. And we've already got our nice clone spheres. I'm going to make another one. And this one, let's just rename it surface. That way we know that that's a special one. It's going to clone onto an object. The object is going to be the symmetry object. We're going to limit to the selection. And it does seem to be mirroring over there. I hope so. So the distribution is currently surface, but I'm going to say I want to be polygon center. Oh, man, that works. I'm so happy that that selection tag mirrors like that. See, that's why I like doing those little tests like that. I didn't think that would work, but I was like, you know what? There's a chance it will, so let's give it a go. So now here we're doing that sphere trick again, but because we have this mesh is very smooth, there's not a lot of sharp angles here. So what I'm hoping we can do is make the sphere a little bit bigger. So here's a thought. Let's jump the sphere up to 10. So it's pretty big. It's pretty big, but you know, I kind of want to go even further. Let's go 15. So you see this actually becoming pretty dense by itself. Inside of transform, I think, is it Z or Y? Let's try Y, but it's probably Z. Yep, I should have gone with Z. I knew it was going to be Z. So we need to go negative 12.5. But I'm going to say, let's just keep going visually. There we go. So you can see those spheres are starting to sink into the surface. If we increase our count a little bit, we can see them a little bit smoother. So that is what it's doing. I just want to see if any are escaping. And unfortunately, yes, right there they are. So it's too big. So I'm going to drop that to 10 and not extrude quite as far down. So we'll keep on offsetting up. What just happened? I must have not typed in 10. Yeah, radius of 0. Let's go to 10. Start subtracting there. And essentially this radius can't be bigger than the detail. So this one's better. You see, this isn't quite escaping. And now all of these little spheres are impossible for it to escape through. And you can see we're actually getting a really nice resolution because all the curves are so soft. We could do a radius that was relatively large. As we get to more detailed areas here, that's where it's going to fight us. But now we've got all these little spheres sprinkled all over the place. The trunk's not great. That's definitely, the Tesla does not pop up on the trunk like that. So that's a bit of a problem, but you know what? let's try and fix it via a plane effector. I'm making this up as we go. Hopefully it works. Plane effector is going to scale uniformly in an absolute way to negative 0.5. And now everything's going to shrink way down. You see these are pretty small, but honestly not small enough. So negative 6. Yeah, negative 6. Create a on the plane effector, go to fall off, create let's do a spherical field. And now the spherical field is going to tell everything where it should shrink. And really, I just want to shrink back here. A little bit of an inner offset, but really we need to first deal with our radius right here. So shrink the radius. Everything's good up until that point. And now we can play with the remapping. So now we need to let this fall off to whatever degree it needs to. There we go. Nice. So hopefully that just works like that. Visually hide that so I don't see that fall off. And now we've got these dotted spheres, which with any luck are going to stop it from escaping the car. Now, like I say, it looks like it's offset a little bit to the right and not left. But you know what? We're only going to be looking at this car from this side anyway. So I'm going to continue. Maybe our symmetry wasn't exactly at 0, or actually we had to offset everything by that like 0.3. So maybe the entire car was like 0.6 too far over. I'm not sure, but you know what? Everything's continuing to work. So let's just plow on through. Anyway, we've got all this nice cleaned up area with what should be perfect spheres. That should make that work really well. Okay, so that's step 1. Now let's activate our cloth again. And we're going to build a little rig here in order to build the perfect wrinkles. So here's my thought. If we create a cube, and I'm going to T for scale and scale the cube way up just barely below that surface. We're going to make it really wide. So what's that, Z? So we're going to grab Z, just crank it up really wide. And we need to make it, honestly, pretty far in Z. So I find this just shooting past, overlapping everything. And then I'll make a child cube. This one doesn't need to be anywhere near as far on X. So let's say 300. And now I can pull this up into the air. And this is going to be a little bit of a trap. We're going to trap our cloth inside of this little rig. Like that. And then another one. And this on object mode, we'll make sure we set this to -X. And hopefully this is, yeah, that's lining up there. I guess it's not perfect. Oh yeah, the entire thing was scooted back a little bit. I think about it. So this cube should go into 0. And now you see it was offset by 3. So we'll do that. And now that's just a little bit of space. That's just a little bit of space. That's fine. Now we'll make these dynamic. Right click, simulation, collider body. Let's copy it to the children. And now this one's gonna be a little bit different than what we've been doing. No bounce, but also no friction. This is a frictionless surface. So the idea here is that this cloth can grow, but it's gonna be squishing it on X because the X can't get through these walls. So then at a particular moment, we are going to allow this to suddenly turn off, and the compressed cloth will fall away. And let's see if this works at all for us. So here is the thought. They're dynamic. Oh, and let's also make these boxes. So they should be super efficient and they shouldn't be able to escape through. And then how many frames are we going to need for this compression to work? Well, I'm not sure. And you know what? We can see how well this is working really quickly by decreasing our height segments. So I'm going to drop that to 10. So let's do another incremental save and hit play. And let's see. Oh, it's going to take a second to start growing, but we don't need that to happen anymore. So now I can grab signal and say, hey, you start right away at 0. You know, we don't need all that time. In fact, I think this can grow pretty quick. Let's have it grow over the course of 25 frames. So right away, this should start expanding, and you're going to see it's expanding. It's doing fine, but with 0 friction, you can see that it can just freely slide in both directions, but this wall is compressing it, and so all these wrinkles are appearing purely along Z, purely along that one axis. So with it scaling up this much, we get all those nice wrinkles. If we were to throw that into the subdivision surface and then take a look, you can see nice wrinkles just on that orientation. If we wanted to, I think we could add a little bit of friction, and then maybe there'd be some more, like a little bit of more imperfection. But you know what? Let's just go with these horizontal ones. Hopefully just mentioning that is enough. So that finishes wrinkling at frame 25. We can give it a couple frames to settle. So let's just say right now at frame 30 is when it turns off. So, I'm just going to go back a frame. F at frame 29, it is on. At frame 28, all 3 of these cubes will turn off. And the instant those turn off, this is going to fall straight down. And I guess it might expand itself out a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be that long. And those had no friction, but everything else sure does. So we've currently got the super low poly version. So let's just see what happens. These exist in the beginning, so it's going to fall down. It immediately started expanding. Gets nice and long, wrinkled in a single direction. So we built a rig to control the wrinkles, which is really fun. I really like that. And nothing else is needed. In fact, in my test rigs, I had been trying to build wind. Those suddenly turned off, but I was trying to build wind that would blow in both directions to scoot them out. But if you have 0 friction, you don't even need that. So yeah, look, all these wrinkles are being maintained. And as this entire thing falls across the car, we're maintaining the horizontal parts, and it's not growing anymore. It's already at the maximum growth. So that part is covered. And the only thing that looks like is, oh no, it's actually pretty good. I thought it was too long, but these seem to be covering the front and back pretty well. So that you can just see it's doing a good job of falling over. And look at all these beautiful horizontal lines without all those wrinkles traveling down. And we didn't change anything about the cloth. All we changed was the way it interacts with the world before it started falling. Now this front's going to be pulled really smooth, but I'm completely fine with that. Okay, so that all seems good. We got those new spheres, which are hopefully going to help it calculate quicker. So effectively, there's nothing to do now except for increase the height segments here back up to 40, which is hopefully enough. Hard to know for sure. And let's just let this run and we'll do another jump. Okay, this has been processing for 7 minutes now. I think 8 minutes. I think I'm cool with stopping it here. I think it's looking pretty sweet. It's not perfect. There's definitely a couple little things I would tweak, but let's try and stop it. I'm gonna hold the pause. Actually, it just stopped really cleanly. I'm impressed. Um, so here is the end result. We've got perfect coverage on the car. Let's see. It looked like it's sneaking through here, but if you zoom up, you can see it's not sneaking through. So our sphere trick worked perfectly. All the wrinkles are looking great. It's very softly draped over the entire thing. So I'm actually pretty happy with that. I think maybe the way I was watching a lot of car reveal videos just as research on here. So I think maybe what we'll do here is let's attach one spring or two. Maybe just one spring here in the back, and we'll try and yank it slowly backwards over the car. So we might need to lower the friction on it. Now, what my thought is let's store the current state. And there's a couple of things I was thinking, like we could have probably decreased the drag and the lift, and it might have fallen down faster. We could have created a field force or some wind and had this blow inside a little bit, so this would clump up more. Honestly, there's a lot of things we could do where you could put springs on here and tug it in little directions and really art direct exactly where it's going. But as far as just the basic drop on this, I'm quite happy with it. Oh, you could also do some geometry here, with like slide down the geometry and then fall in spots. But the more you art direct it, the more you're gonna have to run the simulation again and again and again because it's not perfect. I mean, at certain points, it's like, hey, what are you gonna do? Heck, you could probably just animate a big like loop around this and pinch it in a little bit, and then that would do it. But it captured the overall shape. The wrinkles look nice. So before I mess something up, let's click to set the initial state. I'm going to save incremental. And let's just move on to the yanking of the spring part. Now, we already know a couple things we need to do. First of all, we want this not to animate, because if we play from this point, it's suddenly going to jump back to a small state. We don't want that. So I think we're safe right now to rewind the beginning. No, the box is turned on. It just scared the heck out of me. But yeah, the box is turned on. I don't want to delete them. So why don't we put that into a null? And then I'm just going to move these below the ground. So we can zero that out if we want to jump back to its position. But that's just out of our way for now. And then we have our rest length being controlled by signal. All I have to do to stop this from animating is drag this up. Now it's saying, oh, you're at the maximum value, and the max is 150. So just by dragging it up, I have changed that parameter. It won't pop, but I could drag it back down again and reset it and do more. I also want to mention, I mean, man, we could just spend all day going deeper and deeper on this, but I want to mention that we could potentially like set this here and it'd be like, oh, now we're going to grow from 150 up to 175 and introduce more wrinkles now. So you could do it in stages where it's like, oh, you let it rest and then you grow it and then you change the properties and you grow it some more. You could layer things on top of each other. We could change the gravity settings right now and have everything tugged down further. We could change the friction settings and maybe everything will loosen up a little bit. In fact, there's really heavy friction on the ground here, and putting the ground friction pretty much down to zero. So this could have all slid into position. That could have been a good idea as well. All this stuff is through the floor. So actually, just for fun and just for a frame or two, I'm going to put the friction on the floor down to zero, and it should be safe to hit play, and it should continue from that point. And we didn't do a bunch of frames to let this super settle down. So there's a good chance that this whole thing is still wanting to move a little bit all over the place. And this is going to play through frame by frame. I mean, the hope would be that it doesn't change very much at all, because that means it was a stable dynamic simulation and maybe everything's very happy where it is. In fact, it's played a few frames in and it hasn't changed visually. Oh, there's a little bit. You can see it actually is sliding on the floor that little bit. So while this is calculating, let's just talk about maybe some other things we could do to tweak it. Like I said, we could use wind and blow it in on the sides. It would conform to the shape of the car more. Yeah, lower the friction on the car, not all the way down, but if we just lower the friction down to maybe like 55, then that could potentially slide. Now we are going to have to keyframe the friction on the car because we don't want the stuff sliding right off the car right away. But as it starts tugging on it, we don't want it like getting stuck on the car either. So we definitely need to lower the friction down quite a bit. Maybe not to zero, but quite a bit. And this is actually doing a good job of sliding along the floor with no friction. So you can see we're getting the contour a little bit better. This is just a freebie. We don't need it to do this. But it's kind of neat. Although we did, because it's smoothing out, actually we lost a few wrinkles that were nice on there. So, you gotta be careful with what you take. But you know what? It's a little more it's a little more wrapped around the car. So I'll take it. I'm not sure if I want to keep it. I kind of like those wrinkles on the outside. So, but you can see that, yeah, by changing the floor, we can let that slide in a little bit more. So let's not worry about that. If I rewind, you'll see that these will pop out a bit. With an extra 16 frames, you can see, boom, it had slid in that much and we lost these wrinkles. I liked these wrinkles. I don't mind that draping. So cool. I don't mind losing that. Now, another thing that to keep in mind is something I'm really impressed by is if you go into our expert dynamic tab, you see we never increased our steps per frame. That was able to handle it because of all the spheres, because of the way we set everything up nice and clean. It could handle it at the minimum setting. So it's pretty cool, pretty impressive. So I know that cars, there's a bunch of different systems to pull this away. We're going to do a very simple, clean one. Our angle would probably be, maybe transitioning from one side to kind of this front so the cloth get pulled away, or I'm not sure what the angle is, but I'm just going to yank it pretty much straight from the back here. So once again, the only way to tug on this would, I guess there's two ways. You could create some sort of geometry like a sphere and then animate the sphere to pull it back kind of like a ghost, yanking it out of the way. And the other is creating a spring. The spring has been reliable. I like the way it works. It makes sense to me. So we will do that again. I'll create a spring, Shift S for snap it to some middle-ish point there. Pretty good. Maybe up a little bit. Something like that. And okay, cool. That's the spring. It is going to connect to, oh yeah, I think this makes sense. The cloth. Yeah, we'll connect to the cloth. And not the center of mass, but a polygon point. We never made it editable, so I can't find out exactly what the point is. But once again, we'll just all the way through. Let's see. That one's looking pretty close. That's not it, though. We have to go another row and another row. Because you see we're traveling down point by point. This should be the correct row. One more. Bink. There we go. Perfectly zeroed. Set rest length to 0. Polygon point. Region of influence 20%. That's a little bit bigger. I'm going to set it to 10. Usually I like 5 for a tiny one, but a nice big one on the back of this car could be a good idea. Okay. Friction, I guess mainly the friction. We're going to control the friction via this. I'm really sad that there's no friction like vertex map area, because then we could apply fall offs and then that could be applied. Man, I just wish that there was like vertex maps fields everywhere, or that you could unlock a property to have a vertex field. That'd be amazing. But in any case, this is what we're going to keyframe. We're going to keyframe this friction at the beginning. Actually, well, a couple things we need to keyframe. So the spring is at its current position, and that's all good. Now, once again, we already used signal, so let's use some more signal from Grayscale Gorilla. We could just keyframe, but why keyframe when we can control the X from here? And now I can say I want this to be actually, I don't want it to be linear. I'm going to pull this down. You see we get this curve, and I can pull this back so it's a little bit of a curve. And this should be linear after a certain point. So very easy to get this ease in, but not ease out. And we actually want it to start at this value. So that's the minimum. And then we want it to travel backward. Now, just to visualize it, let's see. I'm going to hold down Alt, so it's jumping to this far away time. And now as I increase this, we'll actually see this pull backwards. So that is about the car's length, but I think it's going to stretch a lot. So let's assume like that as a minimum, and then double that. So this is, yeah, we're going to go like 2,500. So it's going way back. I'm not messing around this time. Hold down Alt and go back to 0, so it doesn't actually change anything. This is happening over the course of 90 frames. I think that's fine. It's going to slowly accelerate. That's 2 whole seconds, and I think we'd want this pulling off relatively quick. You know what? Just for fun, we'll add an extra second on there. 120 frames. Why not? That should tug back. And you know what? Why don't we add another signal tag, and we will control our friction via signal, because why not? So this one can be linear. It's going to go from, now with signal, you could always, the max is 222 and the min is this, so we could always swap those two numbers, or I can swap the spline. So we're going to travel from the max down to the min of 0. Now, I don't think we actually need to go to 0, but we do have to keep in mind that everything is at 222. So if we were to drop it down to 50%, it's still getting 111%. So let's drop down to 25%, and that should be about a friction of 50. So that's hopefully not too much friction. I'm going to go a little lower, 20. So from 200 down to 20. That's going to happen a little more quickly over the course of 60 frames. So the first few frames shouldn't have any of that. The floor, I forgot, the floor should be back to its... I don't know if we want... Oh, the cloth is the one lowering. So I'm going to put the friction of the floor back up so it doesn't start sliding in. And the cloth will slowly lose friction as it's pulled back. Now, the somewhat tricky... We're probably going to accelerate it. But the tricky part will be is as it loses friction, the back will have pulled tight, but the front's going to start sliding off before it's affected. And, we just got to do it and see how it looks. It is going to take a little while to calculate, and I am worried that we might need to add more steps per frame for this section. But as far as I can tell, I think everything is set up properly now. It's not going to explode. It's not going to scale. That's going to pull backward. The spring has a decent region of influence, but it's not huge. But in any case, save incremental. Ooh, not revert to saved. Save incremental. And let's let it calculate again. Frame it up nice. What's a good angle? Yeah, that's giving us some pretty good information there. Hit play. Actually, now I think about it, the spring doesn't need to start at 0. Let's give it a few frames. Let's say 10 frames, and it'll end at 130. And yeah, it's going all the way up to 222. So our animation is up through there. We can, of course, stop it early if need be. Well, we can stop it and even continue. So there we go. Just a couple extra frames. Although the friction is going to start decreasing right away. So let's also grab our, not the rest length, that's not doing anything, but our friction shouldn't start until frame 10 either. Just a couple frames of just letting it chill. So there we go. That's all good. Save and rewind to 0. Play. Let's see. Let's pause this. It looks like the influence is a little large. So I'm going to pause it and we'll try and chill out that. And there we go. Let's rewind. The influence is definitely a little large. So I wonder if it is a region of influence, which is like how big it's traveling over the mesh. So we'll drop this to 5. Even if it's a little big, I'm going to let it play through anyway. Hopefully that's not enough for it to explode. I'm a little worried it will, but let's just give it a go. Okay, this has been running for a while. The trick here, the slight problem I'm seeing is that it's stretching a lot. There's a big stretch as this is pulling back. And at 120 frames, I think that's where we had terminated it. So at this point, it's merely the lack of friction is going to be kind of returning everything to its final state. So I think everything will continue pulling, but like all this stretching is really, really breaking the overall setup. Now, the only way around that is going to be to crank up the strength, but I'm a little bit worried about the way the strength is going to look. I do want to problem solve this, and everything is sliding pretty nicely. Even over these mirrors, this is doing a good job of getting over it. Once it's subdivision surfaced, then that should be quite smooth. And I think, once this is sped up, it might look fine. But of course, we're supposed to be baking it to get that final thing. This was just supposed to give us feedback on if it was working or not. And it's doing an all right job. It's pulling. It's actually a little hard to see how well it's traveling. Yeah, it's kind of half of a polygon's width pulling through. But it is pulling up. I think it would complete mostly. We could probably remap the timing and let it go all the way through here. Having said all that, I think I'm going to pause it, and we will see how the... we will pause it and try and crank up the strength and see what the first little bit of time looks like. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but let's go ahead and give that a go. Grab the dynamics, structural, jump that up to 150, And I mean, I can't really think of anything else to do except for letting this play through at 500 rather on structural. I wonder if we're going to see an effect on the first 10 frames. Maybe we will. And if it's kind of exploding out and looking all not so great, then we might need to think about some slightly different setups, at least for what we're going for here. I like the idea of pulling it out the back, but that's also kind of a flawed idea because all these wrinkles need to be pulled out, and then these are all really short on that direction. So I don't know. We just got to see. So let's hit play on that. Once again, we need to get some feedback on the first couple of frames in order to make a judgment on if this is a good way to go. Now, that one refresh there, I definitely saw kind of movement everywhere. Once again, yeah, it's the new stiffness is going to have a big effect there. So everything moving is not, I mean, once again, if we yank it quickly and you get motion blur and everything, that could be completely fine. New stiffness is going to make everything pinch up a little bit more. So something I would want to probably do, which I'm not going to do, but it would be to let it settle for some time and then do another set initial state with the new higher structure. And then I also hope that this structure isn't so high that we start getting vibrations from it. But it's not going crazy enough for me to worry too much about it. And there's no way for us to know how that's going to look pulled out all the way in the back until it kind of just does it. So my thought is this isn't super freaking out, so I'm going to trust it. And unfortunately, the thing that we have to do now is bake it. So nothing to do except for stop this, turn on, cache out this entire simulation, and see what happens. Unfortunately, it just has to do that entire run. So we will see. So let's go ahead and hit pause. I don't think it'll take too long. Yeah, that calculates nice and quick. And yeah, that's fine. And then we want to cache it. Now this currently runs, let's see, the spring is pulled up until frame 130. I want to give it a little more time than that. So let's go up to, let's say 155 will be where we terminate it. I don't know if that's going to be enough. I'm going to go up to 165. That should hopefully be enough time to pull it all the way, although it would be unfortunate. I'm going to keep on giving it more time, but 175 is hopefully enough time for everything to spring all into place. Maybe it's overkill, but I don't want to have to do the whole recalculation again. So, and I don't want the screen recording to go, so I'm actually going to pause that while it runs this, and I'll pop it back in. So let's go ahead and click on our tag. Say, I think, yeah, I'm just going to click. We could say bake all, but I think bake object is fine. We'll click that. Let this start calculating, and there we go. Okay, I let 90 frames calculate, and we'll check those out. But I should mention that 3 weeks have passed since I hit that cache button because I didn't like the result, and I kept on experimenting and testing and seeing how much further I could push it. And I think I got some pretty nice results. So here's what that bake came from, and let's see what we can turn it into. I'm going to hit play. You're going to see it's going to jump into position, and the spring is going to pull it backward. You can see it's doing a fine job of stretching everything back. So let's just take a look at that. It doesn't go all the way, but you see it stops right around there. Oh, so there's a bunch of things to note here. First of all, a lot of this hasn't quite settled in yet. So we'd want to give it more frames of settling before this starts playing, because otherwise you see they all start wafting around a little bit. So they need more time to settle. In addition to that, the thing that was bugging me the most is how much the fabric is stretching. Take a look at like how close our polygons are in general. They're pretty small, but as we go forward, you're going to see that this cloth is stretching a lot. These are getting pretty much, some of these are getting to be almost square. So this fabric is stretching a lot, and that stretching is just kind of ruining the effect. We have to pull the cloth really far, and it's taking a really long time for any of it to react. In addition to that, there's some some of the other trouble is that it's the friction that's getting caught on the side mirrors here. There's just a lot of places I think this could be improved. And let's see if we can actually observe this as well. We were talking a bunch about how damping can make other parts of the mesh react, even if they're not being affected directly by these forces, in this case, the spring. Well, it turns out that the linear and angular damping do the same thing. If you have any linear or angular damping and you tug something in the back, this front might react as well. So we're going to change a whole bunch of settings here. We're going to try and do it nice and slow and meticulous, because you could just work from here. You could just take the information we did in part 1 or part 2 or this one, and it works. And if you like the look of that, then cool. But I want to push this a couple steps further, go a little bit more in depth, and really take control over this bit of cloth. So we will begin by rewinding. We will clear the cache, and then start changing settings. First of all, this damping has to go away. Goodbye, damping. Actually, you know what? Let's take a few steps and not get rid of that quite yet. Once again, nice and slow, meticulous. What I think I would like to do is, when we go and pull this away, I want to get rid of the friction. I want to turn friction off, because the friction is also making this stretch a lot. So if we want to get rid of the friction, then that means that when the gravity is on, it's going to pull the cloth down. It's immediately going to start sliding away. All the wrinkles will just slide away because of lack of friction. So that means if we get rid of friction, we also need to get rid of gravity. If we get rid of gravity, then the way it's intersecting all of this mesh is going to cause it to kind of float away from it, because it's like slightly intersecting it, and it would float away. So we're going to do a little bit of faking this, and I think it's kind of fun, the ideas that we're going to tackle to do this. So here's the thought. Essentially, I want to take every model that we have that isn't the actual cloth, every model, and kind of inflate it a little bit. Just give it a little bit more surface area so everything gets pushed away just a hair. And if we do that, then the cloth won't be directly touching or colliding with anything. And then if we turn off gravity, it's not going to actually be touching it. So we need to build up that bit of the rig. So I think we can begin pretty easily. Well, we cannot inflate the floor. So I'm going to create a cube, make it wider, at least plenty large enough to be able to collide with our object, minus 100 on Y. So it's right on the ground level. Scoot this into our dynamics folder. And the sphere has a lot of the settings I want, so I'm just going to copy over the spheres dynamics tag and change the collision shape from ellipsoid, from it being a sphere, into being a box. So it's trying to calculate it as a cube. Excellent. Now, with everything lined up right here, this is our little drop thing. This is where we are dropping the cloth from it, so we don't need to worry about those. But everything, I'm even going to grab the floor one, because why not? And grab every dynamics tag here. So that's going to be the symmetry, and it's going to go through all of the different spheres, and just grabbing all those dynamics tags, but not the cloth itself. So with that selected, there are two settings that we want to keyframe. We don't want to just suddenly pop them into existence and inflate them, just like the cloth would explode if we increase the scale too quickly. I want to do the same thing here. And the two settings we want to use are size increment and the margin. Now, different objects, I've never had an intuitive feel for the way size increment works and margin, because they each seem to be used in very specific circumstances. It seems like size increment works really well for predefined shapes, but margin works for just meshes that have been made editable. So I have found that it works perfectly fine if we just use both simultaneously. So along those lines, turning on use will expose margin. And now, very important, by default, Cinema has a margin. What we're doing is overriding the margin. So I'm going to hit Control D just to show you. Control or Command D, Dynamics, Expert. And inside here, you see there's a collision margin already by default of 1. So let's keep in mind that that is the state that it's expecting. So I'm going to go back to one of these dynamics tags, and we're going to start at 1. Starting at 1 is not changing anything. That's the baseline. So at the time of 0, I want to keyframe the margin, and I want to keyframe the size increment. And then I'm going to go forward, let's say 10 frames. I can hold down Alt so it doesn't try and play as I click to 10 and set the size increment up to 0.25 and the margin up to 1.25. So they're just going to increase by a quarter, just a little bit, enough to get it off the surface. And it's going to take 10 frames to do this transition. We're trying to get a new settled position for the cloth here. So along those lines, we can turn off the spring. So we'll turn that off because we don't want that starting to tug it backwards. And just like we're setting any initial state, we need to play it in the timeline. We can't bake it and then scrub. It won't work that way if we want to set initial. So we will rewind, hit play, and not only are we going to let it go the first 10 frames. We'll probably let it play all the way up to 20 to give it a few extra frames to settle. And this should also help with the cloth having not fully settled before. So this is on our same steps per frame of 10 that we had earlier. And it's going to take a little bit for this to play through. And I'll just cut to that. As always, if we want to get this to pause, I'm going to click and hold on the play button. That should force kind of it to acknowledge. If not, you can hit render. I usually hit render twice, but in any case, we've stopped on frame 21 here. It's in a new position. It should have scooted a little bit away from all those surfaces. And now we can set initial. So under the cloth's dynamic tag, I'm going to say set initial state. Cool. With it this way, we could continue, of course, but I think I'd like to bake it down even a little bit more. So normally, if this was a piece of geometry that we'd already baked down, we could just delete the dynamics tag and it kind of automatically bakes it. But we didn't do that. So if we were to make this editable, we'll lose all of our information. So here's a neat trick. I want to bake this down as if it's not dynamic at all. So creating a copy of that cloth, I'm going to delete everything off of it, all those tags, and then make that editable. Now that's editable, right click and go to rigging, pose morph. So we're going to morph this into something. We're going to morph the points, turn on that. Easy way here is just to delete pose 0. We're not going to change that, and drag the cloth in as the source. Say yes, and boop, instantly this cloth that's been made editable has completely perfectly adapted to the surface of the other one. All we have to do is delete the pose morph tag off there, and you see if I hide this, that this piece of cloth now matches that perfectly. So stealing the dynamics tag from the other piece of cloth, we actually don't need that at all anymore. I can turn it off just to keep it in the scene in case we need to go back for some reason. But now there's a lot of settings that we need to change. This is baked down, so we can rewind all the way. Nothing should change. It's just that geometry. But one I forgot very often in my tests is this piece of cloth is expecting to, it's at the grown state. Remember, we grew the cloth from 100% to 150. So if I go into the dynamics soft body, you can see the rest length is still at 150, but this is a brand new dynamic object because, you know, we made this by morphing into this position. The rest length of 150 will cause it to explode out to be bigger again. So simple enough, set that to 100. Now, it looks like these signal tags are still trying to control it. So I'm going to delete those. Those were just keyframing effectively this rest length. I'm going to put this to 100. And there's some other changes that I just learned through doing a lot of testing. If we want to stop it from stretching a lot, we can increase the structural, but just like we were talking about earlier, if you put too much, you introduce vibrations, and we can't use damping to get rid of them because damping, of course, will cause extra parts of the mesh to move around. But we can move this up to 1000 without causing vibrations. So that is set. Under forces, we're already talking a little bit about how the damping is going to introduce a pull in the front. So we'll get rid of those right away. Now, here's a weird one, and I'm not sure how it works. I'd like to do more experimentation. For all I can say right now is that it does work. And that is, if we change the density of the object, I think it makes it easier or harder for the spring to pull it, but it makes it more coherent. So we're actually going to do something crazy here. We're going to change the mass from a world density to a custom density. And I'm going to make it 1,000 times as strong. So we're going to add 0, 0, 0. So this is jumping up to 1,000. So yeah, that's kind of crazy by itself. It actually doesn't really change much. If there was like other dynamic objects here, it'd make this cloth very heavy. But that doesn't matter here. But it does affect some other settings. And one of those settings is in forces. We're using these aerodynamics. And currently we're at 50%. But we have to make it 10 times as strong as well. So we have to add a couple of zeros onto here to make that stronger. In fact, I guess if we added 3 zeros on one, we should add 3 zeros on the other. In my testing, I feel like I only added 2, but hey, let's find out what happens. And then this shouldn't be touching the car at all, which means when it gets pulled away, we're not worried about the friction anymore. The friction, we needed the friction before to stop gravity from pulling this cloth away. But we're going to be getting rid of gravity, which means we don't need any friction. I did do tests where I left some friction, just a little bit so it could overlap, but we're just trying to pull this piece of cloth away, and we're going to pull it away pretty quick. So 0 friction was just giving a nice, silky, smooth pull. There we go. I think that is all of the changes that we need to do directly to this piece of cloth. We do have to go back into these dynamic objects and make them not inflate. So I'm going to select all the dynamics tags from all of our colliders here, and just hold down Control and Shift, or Command and Shift, as I click the keyframe here, and that will actually delete the entire track. Every keyframe is gone off there. Here's our margin. I'm going to get rid of all those, but that doesn't matter too much because we're just going to turn off use. With use off, it's not acknowledging that at all. It goes back to default. Now, if this, well, actually, one more thing, we have to go to our global settings. So I'm going to hit Control D, and under Dynamics, under General, here is our gravity. This is the default value, pulling everything down. Put that to 0. There is now no longer any gravity. Now, some of these different points might be slightly within range of each other, so I'm hoping they don't float too much. But what I'd like to do right now is hit play and just see if everything seems to be sort of working, if everything is just staying in place. Essentially, we don't want anything to change. So let's just hit play. And in fact, we could bake it just so we can scrub back and forth. I think that's a good idea. So we don't need too long to see if that's working. So I will just bake 20 frames, jump the timeline down to 20. And with that in mind, click the cache tag, bake all. All right, that took a few minutes, maybe 4 or 5. Take a look by scrubbing. Let's see what we get. All right, you can see that there's the tiniest little bit of movement there, but you see everything is very settled overall. So this is a very good sign. This is what we wanted. So clearing the cache, we can now get ready to tug on this thing. It is working perfectly. Now, we did turn off gravity, but we're counting on the drag and lift to really pull it out. Now we're just planning on yanking this out of the scene. If you wanted to, we're not going to do it here, but if you wanted to, you could create a simulate forces gravity and create some sort of fall off, like a linear fall off. So as things get pulled away from the car, gravity could start tugging it down a little bit. I did do tests with that. They looked nice. They looked best when I put it about a third of gravity and they got tugged away. But I think it looks really nice without it, and the speed at which we're going to tug this away is going to be fine. Now, we're not actually going to change anything to do with the spring. We just have to turn it back on again. And inside of it, let's make sure we drag the new piece of cloth in. And because we settled everything a little bit differently, click Set Rest Length, and you can see it moved a little bit, but that doesn't change anything. So with that in mind, we need this to calculate. Now, I have done dozens and dozens and dozens of tests. I'm not exaggerating, over the last 3 weeks. So I have a pretty good intuition for the different length of things. And for what we're attempting to do here, I know that this should take about 90 frames to settle. So I'm going to bake 90 frames worth, not to settle, to get pulled, because it's not stretching as much. When it was stretching, it took like 200 frames to do it. But all these little tweaks we made are going to make it so that it can calculate in about 90 frames. So, oh, and before we do, I think it's a good idea when you're going to be letting it chug for a while. This is the kind of thing you want to set this to go when you're going to lunch or something. I'm going to go back to Control D, go back to our dynamic settings under Expert, jump it from 10 up to 15, just a little bit more stable. Let it do the big calculation. So with that in mind, go back to that piece of cloth, hit Bake All, and we'll just let this play through. It'll take a little bit. All right, that was a hefty chunk of time, at least a half hour, but let's see what kind of result we have here. Hit play. It's not going to be real time, but it's playing back about 10 frames a second here. It's getting a nice tug, traveling back. The stretching is minimized. You see that the airflow is having it travel straight back. It does look like it doesn't get all the way out the back. Well, that's a shame. I got to figure that out. Let's save it. Oh, there's all that extra drag. That could account for it. All right, I had to make 1 or 2 little tweaks and do a bake or 2, but I'll go ahead and talk about those here. I had somewhat arbitrarily cranked up our aerodynamics to be an extra 0, an extra order of magnitude than it should be, and 5,000 seems to be a good number there. It's causing too much drag overall, and it couldn't complete in time. I ran this up to 100 frames to fully complete it. And then one last detail, I was seeing a little bit of movement in the overall surface of the cloth, was just drifting a little bit. So one last detail is in the surface of the car. Here's the actual car model that is dynamic. I went into that and turned the margin on and put the margin down to 0. So it essentially went very accurate, and that stopped it from drifting. And now you'll see that as I drag this front part is not being affected at all, and we're getting a very, very nice stretch here. Let's go ahead and hit all frames. This is going to play back very slowly, but you can see that everything is very, very well settled and is getting tugged back. The polygons are not stretching too badly, and everything's getting drifted backward quite nicely. So as far as wrapping this up, the way I've been doing it is, first of all, you'll see that the final frame can, I think it almost always does. It freaks out the final frame and shoots back in. So we'll be able to deal with that in various ways. Frame 0 is fine though. So what I've been doing is right-clicking and baking it as Alembic. It's very quick to do this overall because it's already done all the baking process. So pretty much it's just playing through that once and converting it to Alembic. And the nice thing is the Alembic plays back very quickly. So that has now been cached. I can go into the dynamic version of this and turn off the dynamics tag, so it's not going to do anything. And if I were to pull this out, in fact, this zero null that we created is a little bit up in the air. So what I'm going to do is make sure that this is zeroed out in the same spot. So I'm going to hit Alt-G to put that into another null, pull it out, and move our new cloth into there just to make sure it's got the same relative position. So now if I hit play, you can see we're going to get much better playback. We're at more than 30 frames a second, so this is real time. And it's pulling the cloth back very nicely. Now, like I said, the overall effect, if you want it to go nice and slow and drift, then that's fine. I wouldn't want to yank it too much quicker, otherwise you're going to have to keep doing more and more subframes. But what's nice is now that we've baked this out, it is pretty easy to just change the speed. So I've been typically finding if we jump this to something like 300%, hit play, it's going to play back a lot faster. Oop, we have to hide this original one. So if we hit play, this is going to pull back, and it just looks so much nicer. I don't know. I just like the overall effect of going yanked back quicker, and I feel like it's more accurate to the reveal. I love the way these wrinkles are getting cleared out as the cloth reaches them. And then we get this aerodynamic drift where this is pulling upward and it even like overshoots the roof. And based on videos I watched of this happening, that is what happens. And then it re-straightens itself out because of the aerodynamics. So that part is great as well. We can go to the exact frame where this begins to freak out. Let's zoom out a little. Right there. So I'm just going to go one frame earlier. So frame 32. And I suppose I would just keyframe this to be turned on, go one frame forward, turn it off. So now it's no longer there. And it's well out of the scene, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. You might need to catch more frames if it was getting caught in a reflection or something. And there we go. We can grab this entire null, drop in the subdivision surface, put the material we generated onto that. And through all my tests, I did do a few tweaks, and I thought the material looked a little bit better if I just let the natural color of the cloth come through. So we can, I'm just going to set this to something very dark, just catch a few highlights, and that will play through very nicely. I can go to whatever frame, render it. Let's just see what a still frame looks like. And obviously in the beginning of the tutorial, I showed some of the animations that were completed from here. So that's going way deeper, but getting a lot of control over the way that the mesh is behaving by this point, eliminating gravity, cranking up the density, eliminating all the friction. There's a lot of things we can do and keeping all those things in mind. So there's a simpler version, and now you have the more advanced one. So that should wrap this one up. So there we go. That wraps up part 3. Thanks for making it all the way through. So, that last one was a bit longer than I thought it would be, but there's a lot of detail and a lot of little tricks and things to play with. I'm actually glad a lot of the things that went wrong, so I could cover how to solve them and just ways of exploring it. So if you like this tutorial, like the kind of stuff I do, there's lots of ways to support. First of all, you could follow at Rocket Lasso on pretty much all the social media. We've also got a Slack channel where everybody continues the conversations after these tutorials and after all the live streams. Speaking of live streams, I do a live stream every Wednesday called Rocket Lasso Live, where I answer questions live from the chat all about Cinema 4D all over the place. I have lots of guests. It's a lot of fun. It'd be great if you came on over. So if you like this video, comment and a like is always amazing. And then if you like this kind of content in general, then you could always support me on Patreon, which enables me to make more tutorials and do more of the live streams. So I appreciate all of that. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to see what everyone creates from these tutorials, and I'll see you in the next one and in the next live stream. Thanks, everybody. Bye.